On D-Day night, thousands of German soldiers opened fire on shadows that weren't alive. They swore paratroopers were dropping everywhere, shouting orders, firing rifles, overrunning fields. But the invaders were nothing more than children's toy decoys engineered by one quiet British rigger, and his genius nearly rewrote the battle before it began. June 3rd, 1944. Somewhere outside Exeter, a thin fog clings to the grass as Staff Sergeant Daniel Kerrigan crouches beside an open crate, hands trembling from a night without sleep. He forces a slow breath. The hangar lights flicker behind him, humming like a warning. Dawn is coming, and with it, something he's never tried at full scale. A wooden puppet stares back at him. Not a child's puppet exactly, but close enough to unsettle him every time he looks at it. Limbs made of cloth-wrapped tubing. A hollow torso, canvas skin, a vacant face stitched with a crooked grin. Lightweight, disposable, and dressed in a tiny British uniform that looks stolen from a toy chest. Kerrigan lifts the dummy into his lap. The thing slumps like a rag doll. He checks the rigging lines he threaded through its shoulders an hour ago, tugging step by step, fingers moving on instinct. Everything about the setup feels wrong. Every instinct he has tells him soldiers should not fall from the sky made of burlap and straw. A sharp metallic click echoes in the dark. It snaps his focus. Careful with that arming pin, he mutters to the corporal behind him. The corporal freezes mid-motion, eyes wide. He's working on the small charge built into each dummy's chest. A simple noisemaker, barely enough powder to imitate rifle fire. But in a silent field in France, with nerves already stretched thin, enough to sound like dozens of men. Kerrigan returns to his work. No more mistakes. Not now. Not with so much riding on this strange little army he's building. A soft breeze pushes through the open hangar door. The scent of engine oil drifts with it, reminding him of the C-47s waiting on the tarmac. In 36 hours, those planes will carry thousands of real paratroopers toward Normandy. Men who will hit the ground under fire, scattered in the dark, fighting to survive the most important night of the war. Kerrigan won't be among them. His war is quieter, cunning instead of violent, threads and canvas instead of bullets. A mission built on deception. Another dummy, still half-dressed, lies at his feet. The face is blank. Kerrigan pulls a thumb-sized flare from a small metal box. He inserts it into the dummy's chest cavity next to the tiny charge. The flare will keep burning after it drops, one bright spark in the middle of farmland. Something to make a German sentry's heart jump. Something to make them believe more paratroopers are landing nearby. A micro-hook snaps through his nerves as a gust of wind slams the hangar door, rattling the frame like someone trying to break in. Kerrigan doesn't flinch this time. He's too deep in the work, too committed. He pulls a strap tight, checks the release buckle, then checks it again. Every motion ties him closer to the coming night. His mind drifts to the briefing. 1,000 dummies will fall across the French countryside, silent silhouettes under the moon. He heard the planners calling them Ruperts, as if giving them a name made them less morbid. Their job is simple. Look real, fall real, and confuse an entire German corps long enough for real men to land miles away. The only problem? Ruperts weren't designed to fall correctly. Not until Kerrigan reworked them. He still remembers testing the first prototypes months ago. They plummeted like sacks of wet flour, spinning, twisting, bursting apart before they touched the ground. Some tangled midair. Some dropped their chute too early and drifted like broken umbrellas. None behaved like a man in free fall. If the Germans spotted the difference too quickly, the whole operation would collapse. Kerrigan refused to let that happen. He sliced open prototypes, adjusted the stuffing, moved weights from chest to knees, rebalanced the harness points, rewired the little explosive charges. He even tested different heights for the release chute, trying to match the timing of a real paratrooper's fall. Tonight is the payoff. He rises slowly and carries the completed dummy to a long wooden table where rows of Ruperts lie shoulder to shoulder. Dozens of still bodies. A strange army waiting for a war they will never understand. He sets his Rupert down and lines it up with the rest. Soft footsteps approach behind him. Captain Hensley. coffee in hand, creases under his eyes. How many left? Hensley asks quietly. 14, Kerrigan replies. He wipes his palms on his trousers. Maybe 15. Hard to tell which crates came pre-rigged and which didn't. Hensley nods. You've done good work. They want us airborne tomorrow night for final tests. Kerrigan expected that, but the words still tighten his chest. Airborne tests mean risk. They always do. The captain studies the row of dummies. Strange, isn't it? Real men depend on these little fellows. Kerrigan shakes his head. Not strange. Necessary. Another micro hook catches the moment. A sudden flicker of the overhead lights, a sharp pop, and then the hum returns. Kerrigan glances up, imagining for a split second that the lights will fail and plunge the hangar into darkness. Imagining what it would feel like tomorrow night when the sky itself becomes a battlefield. Hensley sips his coffee. You getting any sleep tonight? Kerrigan snorts. No. They share a tired, crooked smile. At 0630, the engines of the nearest C-47 cough awake. The sound fills the air like a growl. Kerrigan steps outside, shielding his eyes from the rising sun. The plane sits motionless, its propellers spinning faster and faster until they blur into a steady roar. One day from now, he'll load crates of Ruperts into its belly, and then he'll jump with them. A rigger doesn't usually go out the door, but Kerrigan insisted. He needs to see how they fall with his own eyes. Needs to confirm his rigging doesn't fail under real wind, real weight, real chaos. He touches the canvas harness on his chest out of habit. The familiar weight grounds him. The tension builds inside his ribs as he stares at the open ramp of the aircraft. Tomorrow he will leap into the dark, not as a soldier with a rifle, but as the man responsible for 1,000 silent shadows. Behind him, another crate thuds onto the concrete. More Ruperts, more work. He heads back into the hangar. Inside, the corporal has managed to arm the next line of dummies without incident. Kerrigan joins him, kneeling beside the nearest one. Its canvas hand slips from his grip, brushing his knee like a plea. He tightens the parachute straps carefully, pulling each buckle until it locks. The fabric whispers under his fingers. Outside, the steady engine drone thins into morning quiet. Another micro hook slides into the moment. A phone rings sharply from the office across the hangar. Loud, urgent, too early for anything routine. Kerrigan freezes mid-knot. Hensley answers with a clipped, Hensley speaking. Silence. Then he steps out of the office, face harder than before. Orders, he says. Final drop test moved up. We go in 4 hours. 4 hours. Not tomorrow night. Kerrigan's pulse spikes. 4 hours means no rest. No extra checks. No margin for failure. He forces himself to move. To think. To breathe. If he doesn't finish, if the rigging isn't perfect, the deception fails. The airborne assault becomes riskier. Men could die because a canvas puppet didn't fall properly. He reaches for the next Rupert with steady hands. The war is already creeping closer. June 4th, 1944. 4 hours later, the C-47 claws through rough air over the Devon countryside, while Daniel Kerrigan steadies himself beside a crate of Ruperts. The floor vibrates under his boots, every rattle reminding him how little time remains before the real invasion. Wind slashes through the open door, turning his breath shallow and sharp. He checks his chute lines fast, but methodically, forcing his fingers to stay calm. The crates beside him hold 6 Ruperts packed tight, each rigged with charges, flares, and the careful balance he spent weeks perfecting. If any of them fails here, the deception fails in France. He presses his palm flat against the lid, feeling the vibration buzz through the wood. The plane tilts hard left, and the crate jumps an inch. Kerrigan grips it before it can slide, his shoulder burning under the strain. For a heartbeat, he imagines losing his grip and watching the crate tumble, smashing every dummy before they ever leave the aircraft. He steadies it and mutters to himself to breathe. The loadmaster leans in, shouting over the engine noise that they're nearly at the drop point. Kerrigan nods once, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the open door where the landscape rushes by like a green blur. He tries to picture Normandy at night, the same view but darker, filled with flak instead of farmland. He pops the top slat off the crate and reaches inside. The first Rupert feels too light in his hands, its limbs catching the wind, even inside the plane. Kerrigan grips the harness and moves toward the opening, shoulders squared, boots sliding half an inch on the vibrating floor. The cold reaches straight into his bones. The red light clicks on above the door, bathing the interior in a dull warning glow. 30 seconds. Kerrigan's heartbeat quickens, but his hands stay steady on the canvas figure. He checks the chute attachment once more. No loose lines. No twisted strap. It has to work. Wind roars across his face as he reaches the door. His sleeves flap violently, tugging at him like unseen hands trying to pull him out early. He leans forward, letting his boots brace against the metal ridge. He waits for the green. 5 seconds. 4. 3. The green light flashes. Kerrigan pushes the Rupert into the open air, muscles tightening with the effort. The dummy snaps away from his grip and drops into the void, twisting for a second before the chute blossoms behind it. Kerrigan leans out just far enough to watch its descent, breath caught halfway between hope and dread. The chute holds. The dummy stabilizes. It falls like a man. Relief hits him so hard, he almost forgets there are 5 more to send out. He drags the next Rupert from the crate, ignoring the way the wind snatches at its small uniform. He moves back to the door, sets his stance, and waits for the next timing signal from the loadmaster. Another gust slams the plane sideways. Kerrigan grips the door frame with one hand and the dummy with the other. The aircraft levels again, but the jolt sends a pulse of adrenaline through him that refuses to fade. If this weather worsens, the test becomes worthless. And if they can't test properly, they'll enter D-Day blind. The next Rupert goes out clean, and the next. Each chute blossoms like a pale flower drifting downward. Each figure hangs upright, like a real paratrooper dropping into an unsuspecting countryside. The deception looks almost beautiful from here, if beauty can survive in the shadow of invasion. Halfway through the drops, a sudden shudder runs through the C-47. The pilot yells something Kerrigan can't hear. The loadmaster's expression sharpens. For a heartbeat, Kerrigan thinks they're taking enemy fire, though he knows that's impossible over Devon. A moment later, the vibration evens out, but the tension stays lodged in Kerrigan's chest. He forces himself to the crate and grabs another Rupert. His hands are colder now, stiff from the assault of the wind. The dummy slips slightly before he catches it by the harness. He adjusts his grip and steps back toward the door. He refuses to miss a single detail. The 4th Rupert drops clean, then the 5th. Each descent looks right. Equal weight shift, proper swing arc, chute inflation within the expected seconds. Kerrigan watches every fall until he can't see the outlines anymore. It feels like watching his own work breathe for the first time. Only one remains. The last Rupert in the crate lies twisted from the turbulence, its limbs tangled in the straps. Kerrigan kneels to free them and find a loop snagged under the edge of the crate. He slips his glove off and works the line carefully, easing it loose without fraying the fabric. Even a single tear could throw the weight distribution off. He frees it and stands, holding the final dummy against the wind. This one matters most. The last test tells him whether his adjustments will survive the chaos of a real combat jump. He steps into position again and waits. The loadmaster signals. Kerrigan nods back. He leans into the wind and releases the Rupert with a hard shove. It spins once, twice, then the chute snaps open. The swing is a bit wide. Kerrigan watches, breath held tight. The figure stabilizes again and descends smoothly, the flare on its chest flickering faintly as it drops. For the first time today, a small ripple of pride breaks through the tension. Every adjustment he made works. Every risk he took to get here finally shows its worth. The Ruperts will fall like real soldiers on D-Day. They'll draw fire, pull German units in the wrong direction, and buy precious minutes for the men who land miles away. The loadmaster taps his shoulder, signaling him to get ready. Kerrigan nods, checks his own harness again, and steps toward the door. His turn to jump. His turn to feel what the Ruperts feel. Wind slams against him as he stands at the edge. The ground races below. His pulse hammers. For a moment, everything around him shrinks to the open sky and the sound of his breath. He jumps. Air tears past him, cold and violent. His chute snaps open with a sharp tug that jerks his body upright. He steadies himself, legs swinging gently. Below him, the dummies hang like scattered silhouettes drifting through the countryside. He watches them fall and knows the next time he sees this view, it will be over enemy territory, with live rounds slicing the dark. His descent slows. The wind steadies. The field rises to meet him. Tomorrow night, these tests become reality. Tonight, the war moves one step closer. June 5, 1944, late evening. The last light slipping behind the English coastline as Daniel Kerrigan stands beside the open belly of another C-47, the hangar lights behind him glowing like a dying fire. The Ruperts are lined up in wooden crates ready to be loaded, each one fixed, checked, weighed, and armed for the real drop over Normandy. Kerrigan feels the pressure settle across his shoulders the way the harness settles across his ribs. Everything he tested this morning will now be repeated in darkness, under fire, across a coastline crawling with German patrols. He forces his breathing to stay slow as ground crews roll the first crates into the aircraft. The engines thrum in a deep, steady rhythm that feels like a countdown. He adjusts the tape around one crate to make sure no straps snag during loading. Even a loose thread can jam the ejection slide mid-flight. The captain hands him the final briefing sheet. No long explanations, only coordinates and timing. The deception units will drop after the first Pathfinders, but before the main airborne assault. Hundreds of Ruperts will scatter across several landing zones to mimic entire battalions. Their tiny charges will crack like gunfire. Their flares will burn in the hedgerows. And if Kerrigan's work holds, German radio reports will erupt with panic. He folds the briefing and tucks it into his pocket, aware of the pulse rising under his jaw. Once they lift off, there's no room for hesitation. A cold gust sweeps through the airfield as he steps onto the loading ramp to check the final crate himself. One of the younger riggers hovers nearby, clearly nervous. Kerrigan gives him a short, quiet instruction to tighten the right side chute pack. The rigger moves quickly, grateful for the direction. It reminds Kerrigan of his own first jump years ago, how he clung to every detail because details were the only things that kept a man alive. Now those details keep an entire deception force alive long enough to fulfill its role. He climbs deeper into the aircraft. The interior smells of oil and canvas and cold metal, the familiar scent that always signals something dangerous is about to happen. He tests the anchor points that will hold the crates until they're kicked clear. His fingers move fast but not rushed. He steadies himself against the wall as the plane vibrates during engine checks. The sound grows into a steady roar that fills his bones. A microhook forms as the aircraft's right wing dips unexpectedly during a taxi test, throwing a few unsecured tools sliding across the floor. Kerrigan reaches out instinctively, stopping one before it clatters into a crate. His chest tightens for a second. A blown crate latch now could scatter dummy limbs across the aircraft and ruin hours of preparation. He orders the crew to double-check everything. They do. Every click of every latch sounds like another heartbeat restarting. Dusk deepens as they move toward the runway. The sky is bruised purple, heavy with the sense that tonight is different from every night before it. Kerrigan sits on the metal bench beside the crates, his harness clipped to the safety line. He glances at the nearest Rupert lying stiff under its canvas wrap. The stitched grin catches a sliver of fading light, unsettling him again, though by now he should be used to it. He wonders if German soldiers will feel the same chill when they see dozens of these shapes drifting toward their fields. The plane pauses at the edge of the runway. The moment stretches. Kerrigan tightens the straps across his chest until they bite. The captain moves down the line and gives a firm nod. They're cleared. Engines scream louder. Kerrigan steadies himself as the aircraft lurches forward, gaining speed on the darkening strip. The wheels lift. The ground falls away. England shrinks to shadows under the wings. The channel waits ahead, black and rough, the wind punching through the open seams of the plane like a living thing. Kerrigan checks the first crate's release mechanism again. Then again. Every instinct tells him something will go wrong in the first minutes over the coastline. Germans will fire at anything with wings tonight. Searchlights will sweep the sky. The deception crews must drop quickly, precisely, and vanish before enemy fighters get near. His stomach knots as the engines strain against the growing wind. He wonders how many enemy units will scramble the moment they hear the false reports. How many will rush toward the fields where nothing waits but canvas ghosts? The loadmaster taps his shoulder and points toward the blackout map clipped to the wall. They're nearing the French coast. Kerrigan rises to his feet and braces his boots as turbulence throws the plane sideways. He grabs a cargo strap until his balance returns. The loadmaster shouts the countdown to the first drop zone. Kerrigan moves to the rear ramp and unhooks the securing bars. His hands move with the swift certainty that comes from exhaustion and necessity. Below them, through the narrow opening, he catches a glimpse of faint gunfire blinking along the distant shoreline. His heart kicks once. The war is awake now. The red light above the hatch snaps on. Kerrigan's pulse matches its brightness. He and the loadmaster heave the first crate into position. The aircraft bucks as flak bursts too close, rattling the walls, shaking loose dust from the metal seams. The crate slides cleanly into the drop channel. Kerrigan checks the line and gives the signal. The loadmaster kicks it free. The crate vanishes into the black sky, taking 6 Ruperts with it. He watches long enough to see the faint bloom of chutes below. The shapes drift like pale seeds blown into enemy soil. Tiny flares begin to spark along the ground as more dummies fall across the landscape. Radio traffic among German units will be chaos within minutes. Another crate moves forward. Kerrigan works faster now. His muscles burn with each shove. The C-47 shakes again as flak detonates off the port side. The sudden glare washes through the interior, casting long shadows across the dummies still waiting. Kerrigan forces himself to ignore the shockwave buzzing in his teeth. They can't break rhythm now. The second crate goes out. Then the third. Each release feels like letting go of a piece of himself. Months of work tossed into the dark to do their part in the largest operation he's ever touched. The Ruperts fall in clusters, some burning, some drifting, some cracking loud enough to echo off farm walls. Perfect chaos. The last crate rolls into place. Kerrigan steadies it with both hands as a violent shudder ripples through the aircraft. For a moment, he hears nothing but the rattle of loose metal and the distant thud of artillery. He pushes the crate into position with the loadmaster's help. It slides into the channel. He nods. The crate drops. Kerrigan steps back, breath tight, sweat cold at his hairline. The green light blinks off. They're clear. The Ruperts are scattered across Normandy, hundreds of silent soldiers creating the illusion of entire divisions. He leans against the wall for a moment, letting the tension ease just enough to breathe again. Outside, the sky flashes with distant fire. Somewhere down there, enemy commanders are already shouting for reinforcements. And none of them know they're reacting to canvas and straw. Kerrigan closes his eyes for a heartbeat. The deception is working. The invasion is in motion. And his strange army is already fighting its silent war. June 6, 1944, just after midnight, the C-47 banks away from the French coastline as Daniel Kerrigan presses against the cold metal wall, the vibration running through his bones while the night outside flickers with distant gunfire. Below him, Normandy stretches as a patchwork of hedgerows and small villages, lit by scattered fires where Ruperts landed moments ago. He can still picture the last crate dropping cleanly, the cluster of canvas figures drifting into darkness like silent messengers. Now he needs to see what they've done. The loadmaster signals for him to get ready. Kerrigan checks his harness with quick, practiced motions. His fingers are stiff from the cold, but they move with certainty. He steps toward the open door, wind hammering his face, the channel gone behind them, and a landscape of France rolling beneath like a vast shadow. He watches a flare burn below, bright enough to mark a cluster of dummies scattered along the edge of a hedgerow. A small burst echoes faintly. Germans will be reacting already. He braces himself on the doorframe and waits for the signal. The green light flashes. Kerrigan jumps into the void. Air tears past him, cold and sharp, the roar swallowing his breath. His stomach flips as he drops fast through the darkness. The world below sharpens into rows of trees and thin roads glimmering under faint moonlight. The chute deploys with a harsh snap that jerked him upward. His body steadies into a swing. He breathes through the impact against his harness and takes in the scene beneath him. The Ruperts have done their work. Fires burn where their tiny charges ignited. Flares sputter. Shadows ripple through the fields as German patrols scramble in the wrong direction. He hears distant shouts, the clatter of vehicles starting, the unmistakable sound of troops reacting to a threat that isn't real. Kerrigan angles his chute to land near one of the dummy clusters. The air buffets him sideways, but he corrects just enough to avoid a stone wall rising from the dark. He hits the ground hard, rolling through damp grass until his momentum stops. For a moment he lies still, breath shaking, listening. In the distance, rifles crack. Somewhere to the east, German machine guns chatter at shadows. His heart thumps once, hard, as he realizes the deception is pulling entire units toward empty fields. He rises to a crouch and surveys the ground around him. A Rupert lies nearby, its canvas uniform torn from landing, the small flare on its chest still glowing like a fading ember. The thing's stitched grin looks eerie in the firelight. Kerrigan steps closer and checks the chute lines. All intact. The drop worked. Farther out, he sees more dummies scattered along a narrow orchard. German voices drift through the trees as a patrol pushes toward the noise. They shout orders, clearly convinced real Allied paratroopers are hidden ahead. Kerrigan ducks behind a fallen tree trunk as their flashlights jitter across the orchard floor. A sharp explosion erupts to the south as another cluster of Ruperts deploys their small charges. The patrol splits, half rushing toward the new sound, half sweeping through the orchard with rifles raised. Kerrigan stays low, barely breathing, hoping none of them stumble close enough to notice that the figure lying 10 yards from him is stuffed with straw. The patrol moves past in a hurried line, boots crunching in the grass. He waits until their footsteps fade before slipping into the shadows, keeping the orchard at his back. A micro hook grips him as he spots a German flare arcing upward in the distance, bathing the terrain in harsh white light. For a heartbeat, he worries they'll see everything: the dummies, the pattern of their landings, the absence of real soldiers. But the flare falls, hissing as it burns out, and the confusion continues. Vehicles grind along dirt roads, all heading toward false reports. Entire sectors are misreading the battlefield because of what he helped build. Kerrigan moves toward a small rise where he can see more of the countryside. The horizon glows with muzzle flashes and burning haystacks. Ruperts hang from trees, lie in ditches, slump across fences like fallen men. Germans fire at them anyway, convinced they're under attack from multiple airborne units. The deception has turned the night into a maze of ghosts. He crouches and watches the chaos unfold for several minutes. Every misdirected searchlight, every panic shout, every wrong turn confirms that the operation is working exactly as planned. The real airborne troops are landing far from here, slipping into position while the Germans chase shadows. Kerrigan feels the weight of the last 24 hours settle into him. The exhaustion, the fear, the strange pride. His canvas army has done its job. He decides it's time to move toward the extraction point marked on his map. He keeps to the hedgerows, slipping through tall grass, ears tuned for patrols. Twice he hears engines approach and drops to the ground until the noise fades. By the time he reaches the rendezvous clearing, the eastern sky is turning pale. Dawn approaches. 2 other operatives emerge from the shadows, both carrying the same tension he feels. They nod to him, quiet but resolute. The signal team is already preparing the lamp to guide in their pickup aircraft. Kerrigan glances once more toward the dark fields behind them, where his Ruperts lie scattered like strange, fallen soldiers. He knows the Germans won't understand what hit them until it's too late. He knows somewhere across Normandy, real paratroopers are gaining ground because German units chased illusions. And he knows his work, strange as it was, mattered tonight. As the rescue aircraft approaches, its distant hum growing louder, Kerrigan exhales slowly. The war is far from over, but his silent army of canvas and straw has already changed the shape of D-Day.